Hello, everyone. My name is John Orhand, and on this episode of Cinema Spotlight, we're going to be going into the Pulsing Cinema archives again and pulling out an older show, a show which was dedicated to Robert Mulligan's The Nickel Ride, a very obscure 1970s film, only very recently released on DVD. Now, Robert Mulligan is an A-list director, the director of To Kill a Mockingbird, the director of Summer of 42, and this is one of his lesser-known 1970s films. Perhaps not the greatest film in the world, but very, very interesting little neo-noir 1970s film with a wonderful, a really truly incredible performance by Jason Miller, who is Father Karras in The Exorcist. So here it is. I hope you enjoy it. One really obscure film which I enjoy the hell out of is a film from 1974 from director Robert Mulligan called The Nickel Ride.
What's happening, Carl?
Smoke?
No. You never check on me.
Who's checking, for Christ's sake? It's just a look, that's all.
That's bullshit.
All right. The people say, look, check the block. I say, what for? I know Cooper, I know the area, that's all I need to know. What have I got to see? A lot of years Cooper says something, it goes, period. Right, Cooper?
You asking or telling?
I'm telling. They don't want to hear nothing. You can't talk anymore. All they want is yes, no, right away.
Look, it takes time to make a deal. You got to handle with the guy. A few laughs, couple drinks, couple ladies. It takes time and it takes patience.
Like, I don't know, huh? They don't want to hear that, these new guys. Young guys. Razor cuts, wide ties, goddamn bookkeepers, and lawyers. What the hell do they know about the streets, Coop?
I guess it kind of falls into that little tiny subgenre of kind of 70s neo-noir LA thrillers, you know, urban kind of glossy, dirty, you know, Fat City, Eddie Coyle. There was that Bill Cosby, Robert Culp film. It became a little mini genre of films set in an urban setting, often LA, with a kind of gritty texture, with a bit of moral ambiguity to them, with the basic kind of structural precepts of the classic noir film genre updated to the expanded mores and social concepts of 70s new wave cinema. Traditional yet new. Old yet new. You know, like The Friends of Eddie Coyle, starring Mitchum, with music by Dave Grusin, who also composed the music for The Nickel Ride. So it was a combination between the old and the new. You know, Robert Mitchum, for one of the classic Jacques Tourneur noirs out of the past, remade that horrible James Woods, Jeff Bridges film. So it was a genre of film. Nickel Ride really, and it's a really obscure genre. You really don't really hear much about it unless you're kind of an aficionado of the, let's say, good half dozen films which really kind of settle into it. But The Nickel Ride is just a really interesting, obscure film. When I learned about it, I watched it, I saw it on Flicks, literally 5 or 6 years ago. Taped it, loved it, watched it, you know, over and over constantly, literally ran my dog-eared VHS Pan-and-Scan copy of it ragged. It's a 235 film. But it was a 1974 film. It was nominated for the Palme d'Or that year. It was going in competition against The Conversation, which is another kind of neo-noir film for Francis Ford Coppola. And it was a film that just kind of got lost in the cracks over the years. Jason Miller from The Exorcist stars in the role of Cooper. Cooper is, the film is about this guy, Cooper, who is this kind of old-time local man about town, you know, the local guy. He runs a certain block, he's got a little shop, he's got an office, and basically he runs, fencing for this crime syndicate. He's got this bunch of keys which he is strapped to his belt, which is keys to all these warehouses where all this kind of stolen merchandise is stored by this kind of amorphous, weird crime syndicate, which we're not really sure of the entity in the film. It's just crime. And he is just that archetypal, Sam Peckinpah-esque, the cowboy at the end of the cowboy era, where it's a different era, things are changing. He feels, and he's getting older, and he feels within him certain pressures of his job. I mean, the crime syndicate begins to kind of come down on him, and the film is concerned with basically his kind of downfall through forces which are outside of him, and at the same time forces which are interior to him. Well, the main force in the film is he's all throughout the film he's trying to buy what is called the block, which is this block of warehouses, block of addresses, and down in the seedy part of downtown LA, where it'll be like the crime syndicate heaven, where they just have water, electricity, bunch of addresses, and it can be like, the Toys R Us of stolen merchandise. It's all in one place.
400,000 square feet. 19 addresses, free and clear.
Christ almighty, it's bigger than I thought. Electrical?
Electricity and water still work.
It's all here, Coop. They couldn't ask for any better than this. You see, this they understand. Everything in one place, on ice. Simple. Good business, that's what it is. Consolidate. The old control, right?
We're going to need 15, 20 guys to run it.
You need them, you got them.
Coming down hard, Carl, huh?
You don't want to know, Coop. Don't ask. 2 days I got this headache. Lots of changes. Things, they just aren't so easy. Like friendships. They just don't go so strong anymore.
The thing is, Cooper is having problems securing the block. He's trying to work out the protection with another kind of old police figure. We're never really... The thing is, in this film, is it's very hard to follow because we're never really told who these people are and what they are. We know that Coop is trying to make a deal with a person, a police officer, because we see this old guy, we see him in his house, and as he picks up the phone, there's a close-up of his hand which reaches for the phone, and then we see an old badge on the counter. So, I mean, it's literally tiny micro references to incidents and events which are supposed to clue the viewer into what is going on. It's almost an impenetrable film, the first viewing. You almost have to watch it a few times or read a plot synopsis about the film to understand how the events flow. It's very full of dense, complex dialogue, and it's very hard to follow. So all throughout the beginning of the film, Coop is being chastised by representatives of this crime syndicate. He's trying to make a deal with the cops for protection, but the thing is, he offers them $8,000. They go double. They want like $20,000 for protection, and he's so it's this escalating thing with they don't want to make a deal. They keep up in the ante on him, and he's making the syndicate nervous. Foremost among them, this kind of weird fey guy who keeps always meeting with him, played by John Hillerman. Hillerman, you'd know him probably most well as Higgins from Magnum P.I., and he's in High Plains Drifter as well. But he plays this criminal role, and he delivers some of the best kind of crime, stylized crime dialogue you'll hear in any crime film. I mean, it's just beautiful, pitch perfect 70s neo-noir crime dialogue, about crime and times have changed and blah blah blah, and just talking all this to Jason Miller, who's always just kind of ice cold, and who has there's this growing paranoia within the man. What the crime syndicate does is they introduce him to this kind of young cowboy played by Bo Hopkins.
Turner, this is Mr. Cooper.
Everyone tells me about the key man. I'm real pleased to meet you. Oh, man, I could learn from you. Things work out like Mr. Carl said, you and me be in class together. Nice student-teacher thing. Right tight. Hell, there you are, Mr. Cooper. Up there with the greats. Babe Ruth, Marciana, John L. Sullivan, and the key man. Who's the greatest?
I don't know, but they're all dead except one. How old are you, Turner?
Old enough to know better. Young enough to do it again. Hell, I got plenty of time.
I'll see you tomorrow. Are you kidding me?
Bo Hopkins is constantly feeding praise to Jason Miller. He's always sweet-coating him. He's like, hey, you're the man, the key man, and there's always this kind of interplay with, because Jason Miller has these keys, everybody's always calling him, you're the key man, you know? And very, very stylized, heavy noir dialogue, you know? By the way, this was the first, this film was written by Eric Roth. It was one of his first screenplays. The guy went on to write Forrest Gump and a lot of big, gigantic films, The Postman, just gigantic screenwriter. So there's this growing paranoia within Jason Miller. He also has a young wife played by Linda Haynes. Linda Haynes was an actress who kind of went down to, she did a few great roles and stuff like this, and Rolling Thunder with a screenplay by Paul Schrader, directed by, I think, John Flynn, William Devane, Tommy Lee Jones, another kind of classic 70s film. And she's great here and she's like a typical 70s type blonde, unconventional leading actress beauty. Is a kind of actress which really could barely, get a walk-on part in the 80s and 90s of today, but somehow in the context of the 70s, she could be a main female protagonist within a film like this. And she brings an earthiness and a realism and a beauty with her kind of southern drawl. So she plays Jason Miller's wife. And, there's an interplay earlier in the film between her. There's a great scene where I think the film derives its title, The Nickel Ride, with Victor French and her and Jason Miller when they're talking about how she used to be like a coochie dancer, and there's a review on IMDb where it talks about how she used to be a hoochie, but I don't think she was. The plot is so dense that it's often misunderstood, and you often read synopsis of The Nickel Ride, which are like, it's one of those films where the synopses are kind of like off, or like half the people get it, half the people don't, and really there's nothing to get. I mean, it's so dense that things are left to the imagination. There's these escalating elements which are leading the Jason Miller character Coop to just greater stratus of paranoia. And there's one thing where he tries to get this fighter to take a dive. The syndicate comes in and he comes to this trainer and is like, hey, your fighter's got to take a dive. And the thing is, the fighter doesn't take the dive. He goes with it. And actually, this is actually the scene with the hoochie coochie dance. Right after that, it's this. And by the way, that scene with the hoochie coochie dance, what I was talking about, I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought. But it explains the title, The Nickel Ride, because it was he talks about, he has these weird allusions to circus performers, and which then cues this kind of weird, echoey, kind of mandolin-esque circus type calliope, music, which is almost kind of an evocation of earlier times, of an earlier era, of an earlier age, of a dead age, because he's part of a dead era. He's that kind of cliched, the mobster in a certain mold who can't fit in with the Young Turks, who can't fit in with the new era. There's this really heavily emotional scene in a bar in the middle of night at dark where this trainer is talking about, my fighter couldn't take the dive. And he's like, Jason Miller's Coop's like, go off, take a train, get out of here, disappear, and then later in the film, one of John Hillerman's henchmen, Bobby, in an elevator, he explains within like 2 lines of dialogue how he killed the trainer. He broke the fighter's legs and he killed the trainer, and it's just so quick. And then Jason Miller, there's this welling kind of, he's been taking so much shit from this guy Bobby, and he's always been fucking with him, but he's really been taking so much shit from John Hill and Bobby and everybody that when he hears that this guy was killed, his old trainer friend, he explodes and he just beats it out of Bobby and puts him in the hospital. If you didn't get that little bit of dialogue, where he talks about how he killed Bobby, you would never know it. And it is kind of an interior portrait of this character, because as the stakes kind of escalate, as this deal with the block gets farther and farther away, and eventually culminating into this weekend where the scene totally changes from an urban environment to this house out in the woods. This little vacation house where Jason Miller goes with Linda Haynes to wait out the final decision from these cop figures of whether they're going to go with it or not. The scene totally changes into this kind of beautiful wilderness kind of 70s saturated beauty, lilted colors, Kodachrome K40, Kodachrome portrait. But then it suddenly turns into this kind of insidious thing of paranoia, because the Bo Hopkins character comes up to the lake and starts snooping around, and Jason Miller starts getting more and more paranoid. He buys a rifle, and then it culminates in this kind of crazy dream sequence that his character has, where he sees his wife murdered, and all of this kind of culminates into and we're never really sure. This is all very subtle stuff. It's the criminal world where a line of dialogue, or it's a very subtle screenplay, because the world which Cooper lives in is a very subtle world. It's a world where a line of dialogue, a misplaced glance, or misplaced adulation or care can mean you're dead. And as he gets older, he just can't handle it. And we just see this character just being this pillar of the community, so to speak. This pillar, the hometown boy, the man of the block. We just see him slowly lose touch and lose grip and disintegrate. And it culminates in this really highly emotional scene between Victor Trentropoli and Jason Miller, which I'm not going to give away, but the key images of the keys end the film in a really incredible way. The fact that this film is so obscure is dreadfully horrible. I think, as I said, it's a Robert Mulligan film. Robert Mulligan, one of the great directors, started out in live TV doing shows, much like John Frankenheimer, his contemporaries. But unlike his contemporaries, he never really got the justice. He never really got the praise or adulation. He went on to direct a bit of a box office hit called Summer of 42. And when he directed The Nickel Ride in 74, I think it was just a letdown. It was just one of those films which kind of dissolved into that malaise of the mid-70s crime film. You had the pattern, 71, 72 of like French Connection and Dirty Harry. It was a new kind of genre, and within this genre was kind of birthed this kind of neo-noir genre. Interesting films. And I think The Nickel Ride is just an interesting film. They show it from time to time on Fox Movie Channel, widescreen, which is great because you can really study the cinematography of Jordan Cronenweth, who was a really, really brilliant cinematographer. He shot Blade Runner. I think it's his most well-known showcase film. This film is the kind of neon kind of textures of LA, and this kind of neo-noir texture could probably be rendered by no one other than Cronenweth. And even in the pan and scan version, you really see the quality. And even the pan and scan VHS copy I have, which is quite inferior, probably to a higher resolution, higher quality version, is more original aspect ratio. But nevertheless, it really still is quality material. And then the cast, everyone from Bo Hopkins as the young guy who is really a sweet character.
never thought I'd get me a job so quick. Jobs are hard to come by. Always have been for me. Yeah, Mr. Carl was sure generous letting me drive for him. Oh, but hell, you're the man I ought to thank, Mr. Cooper. And I sure do. Yes, sir. You busted old Bobby boy up real good. What you might call incapacitated. You should have let me done it for you. I would have made it permanent. You know, you're a lot like my old man. Quiet. But he knew things. That old man, yes, sir. You could see it in his eyes. He died a couple of years ago. Yeah, I wish he could see me now. You two'd have hit it just right. Yeah, he'd look at me and he'd say, "Sonny, you're a Cadillac cowboy." Now all I got to do is give me that Cadillac.
The beautiful thing about this film is that Jason Miller understands Bo Hopkins' character more so than Hopkins really probably understands himself. He knows he's being followed and tagged by this Bo Hopkins guy who's just kind of like the attack dog for these crime guys, you know. And when they eventually send Bo Hopkins to kill him at the end, you know, he's already dreamed about it. He knows, and it's almost a perfunctory thing. Bo Hopkins is like, hey, how's it going? And as he puts the silencer, you know, and tries to kill the Jason Miller character. Beautiful performance. Linda Haynes is not given much to do as Jason Miller's wife. Nevertheless, very well done. A lot of older character actors and people given small roles throughout the film. John Hillerman deports himself excellently as the mob connection. At the key of the film is Jason Miller, a playwright who, you know, won a Pulitzer for his play that he wrote that championship season, and was eventually, I think lured. He always kind of made it sound like he was lured into acting through William Friedkin, and starred in The Exorcist in '73. And we all know what happened after The Exorcist. And he made this film shortly after. Went on to act in a few other films, another William Peter Blatty film, Ninth Configuration. Act in a lot of other films, do more acting, do more film, do more theater, direct a version of that championship season for the screen, for film in 1982. And then do a lot of low-budget films in the 90s. It was really horrible. I mean, the last big-budget film he did was probably the biggest budget film he did. Last one was Exorcist 3, which he wasn't even supposed to be in Exorcist 3. It's an interesting story about post-production meddling in the same, very similar to what they did a couple of years ago with Paul Schrader's film, the Exorcist prequel. Brad Dourif was going to be the Gemini killer, and they eventually had to bring Jason Miller back to kind of spice the film up, and they came. I think that was a very late addition, the concept of bringing Jason Miller back. Nevertheless, he was back, and that was probably like the last big budget film he did, and he died a few years ago. But a voluble actor. I mean, you could just see it, the seething. The kind of seething doubt and lack of faith and anger and pain and hurt that he brought to the Father Karras role. He brings all of those qualities to Cooper, the fallen mobster, the old guy, you know, the guy at the end of his rope, the guy at the end, the cowboy in the last ride, you know, that classic cinema archetype, really. And you go with it. You feel there's such a tension and a paranoia to the film. There are a few shots of the film, I think, exaggerated by the pan and scan, of Jason Miller's eyes, and you just see the twinkling. I think Jordan Cronenweth was excellent at eyes. I mean, he seemed to really focus on lighting and properly photographing people's eyes. That was really, I think, a great facet of his cinematography, to the point of really going to extreme, crazy measures in Blade Runner to get red eye, bouncing a red gelled light off a 50-50 mirror off the optical axis of the lens. It's rather complex. When he went to get red eye with those replicants in Blade Runner, was a masterful genius bit of cinematography, and if you ever see a diagram of how he did it, it's quite incredible. You realize what a true master of cinematography Cronenwith was. He was up there with the best of the American Society cinematographers. And there's just scenes in the film where you just see close-ups of Jason Miller. You just see him getting out of bed. He's tired. And he's old, and I think I've read a few reviews where they make fun of this, but it's just so pained, and really it's his story. It's the story of a guy at the end of his rope in a simple sense. But at the same time, this simple story is built over the complex architecture of a changing criminal entity full of hushed sentences and dark corridors and places that you don't even want to go into. Things which are realistic, things which are cinematic criminal archetypes, things which are, of course, noir archetypes. I mean, this thing's got the guy being troubled by his past, the guy at the end of his rope. I mean, it's just classic, stuff out of the past coming to bite somebody in the ass. Classic stuff. The one thing is, it is a very difficult film to understand and to get, because, as I said before, the little lines of dialogue just kind of escape you. And you almost need to see it a few times to really, really get it. But once you do, it's just such a rewarding experience. So I think that's all I have to say about the film. And so I hope I brought this little old classic to light. So there it is, the Pulsing Cinema episode on The Nickel Ride. Now, The Nickel Ride was just recently released for the first time on DVD with another very obscure 1970s crime film, John Frankenheimer's 99 and 44/100th% Dead. Well, that's quite a title. A very strange film, not really as strange as The Nickel Ride. Nickel Ride is more of kind of a classic kind of noir type film with a blistering performance by Jason Miller, and it's well worth the price of the DVD. So in any case, I thank you for listening to Cinema Spotlight, and have a wonderful day.